we have a Q&A piece that sort of answers some of these questions, as well as a memorandum for the business organizations involved in the case that really discusses the economic implications and why that's important to be considered on lake levels, not just the other factors. And then also the underlying study. And Brian might give you an overview of the history of this.
Well, thank you, Senators and Mr. Chairman. Hopefully I can put a little local face on Koshkonong, that topic that's come up several times earlier today. My name is Brian Christianson. I'm the chairman of the Rock-Koshkonong Lake District. We're about 30 minutes south of where we sit here today. We are the largest lake district in Wisconsin. Not only in terms of geography, Koshkonong is 10,600 acres of water, 26 miles of navigable shoreline. We have $600 million of assessed property values within the boundaries of our lake district. We've got 4,000 parcels, and we've got about 7,000 constituents. We are the largest campground area, other than Wisconsin Dells, in the entire state of Wisconsin. We were created in 1999 by the Rock County Board of Supervisors under State Statute 33, lake districts. And we subsequently took ownership of the Indian Ford Dam that creates Lake Koshkonong. It's an impounded lake. We took ownership of that lake, or that dam, that facility, from the county in 2002 after the DNR said that it was a substandard structure and it had to be removed. Not long after that, repairs were made to the dam and water levels were able to be more accurately regulated on Koshkonong, that we asked the DNR to amend their water level orders. Because we are not in an incorporated area, our boundaries do not contain cities or villages. We've got 5 townships in 3 different counties, Jefferson, Rock, and Dane, that are contained within our boundaries. We are regulated by the DNR, not by a city or a village board. As you know, under Chapter 33, we have an annual meeting every year where all of the electors that attend the annual meeting, it serves like a town hall where everyone that attends can vote on the budget and subsequently vote on their own tax rate. We were formed with a flat tax, special charge on the property tax bill of $25 per parcel. That's gone up and down through the years. I've been chairman for 13 years now. It's been as high as $100 per parcel. In fact, the year that we had the vote where the special charge was raised from $35 per parcel to $100 per parcel, we presented to our electors, and we had over 600 in attendance that year, that we intended to appeal the DNR's rejection of our request for a change in the operating orders on Koshkonong, essentially adding a nominal 7.2 inches onto the operating orders. And what that means for a lake like Koshkonong, a shallow white spot in the river, is it simply means we're able to close the gates a little bit sooner. It may not sound like a lot to the folks that testified here earlier today, but what it means when you have a drought condition or low water conditions during those months when boating and recreation and fishing are at their greatest, June, July, August, closing the gates a few weeks early and holding back 7 more inches of water in the lake can mean a lot for the local businesses if that drought or low water condition happens over Memorial Day weekend, July 4th weekend, or even Labor Day weekend. So we asked our constituents, do you want to see this thing through to the end? Do we want to appeal the DNR's rejection of this? And they voted unanimously that year to raise their special charge from $35 to $100 per parcel. And we have a number of people around the lake that own multiple parcels. So this was not an easy financial decision for them, but I think it demonstrates to the state, certainly to our board, 5 elected members, 2 appointed members, that they had every intention of seeing this through to the end. And what that means is why we're here today with the Koshkonong Supreme Court case. That case was nearly 3 years ago. And in that case, as Bob just said, for the first time in the history of the DNR, they have to consider economic impacts. You know, we have things that take into consideration when there's a takings issue. For the first time in the history of the DNR, they have to consider economic impacts. You know, we have things that take into consideration when there's a takings issue, when water levels breach the ordinary high water mark or inundate private property, we have a takings issue, but we've never had a consideration of when the DNR keeps these impounded lakes at an artificially low level. And we had submitted early in the process, the ALJ, administrative hearing process, an economic impact report. That was subsequently thrown out by the ALJ, and that was the basis of the appeal through the last 13 years of this effort. Now we're at the Supreme Court case, and they rule, yes, for the first time, they have to take into consideration economic impacts. What does that mean? We counted it as a victory. Apparently nobody else did, because we waited for almost a year for the DNR to act on that Supreme Court decision, to draft their own economic impact report, to reach out to the local unit of government, the Lake District, to amend and add on to our previous economic impact report. We had a meeting with DNR legal counsel, with the Attorney General and Department of Justice at DOJ to discuss the process. And DNR hadn't even started the process 8 months after the Supremes issued their decision. So we volunteered our tax dollars to fund the economic impact report, with a caveat that we didn't want the DNR to come back to us and shoot down our report simply because of who paid for it. In fact, we went to the UW Whitewater Economics Department. Dr. Russell Cashian and his staff visited all of the businesses on Lake Koshkonong, the restaurants, the bars, the marinas, as well as all of the campground owners, and conducted surveys and conducted hedonic analysis of what artificial low water does to property values and businesses on shoreline property. DNR has had that report for almost a year now, with no action on it whatsoever. There was some testimony earlier that, why should it only be the Lake District's economic report that should be considered by the DNR? There was no other submissions. That was, in fact, staff at DNR issued a press release saying that they were now taking, after over a year of the Supreme decision, that they were taking public comment. We've had multiple public comment periods at facilities around Lake Koshkonong, as well as in Jefferson, Fort Atkinson Courthouse, and here in Madison. We've become the poster child. For everybody today that testified against this bill, we're the poster child. We have followed all the rules. We have done all these projects on Koshkonong. We have done dredging. 200-yard by 200-yard experimental dredge project on Koshkonong. In fact, we were awarded a $100,000 grant from the department to use the spoils to fortify the shorelines. We have sponsored wetland shoreline protection grants, $10,000 grants per wetland owner, 11 wetland owners in total, $110,000. Unlike the state of Wisconsin, Koshkonong, state of Wisconsin, I was said earlier that about 80% of all the wetlands in Wisconsin are publicly owned. In Koshkonong, 80% of the wetlands are privately owned, and there historically been duck hunting clubs for the last 100+ years. They've been privately owned wetlands. They've been places of business. But yet we use public tax dollars to protect their wetland shorelines because we acknowledge the fact, and we worked with the DNR, that these are significant pieces of wetlands that contribute to the overall beauty and health of Lake Koshkonong. But having said that, we've also been the only government body to invest tax dollars on research right on Lake Koshkonong. We know what we're talking about. We know what we're doing. We've hired PhDs from UW Whitewater and Madison and elsewhere. We've justified all of the requests that we've made, from the dredging that we ended up partnering with the Army Corps and DNR to the shoreline protection grants. We even took over operations. We have one of about a dozen privately run fish hatcheries on Koshkonong. It's called the Bark River Fish Hatchery. For the last 20 years, it's been staffed by LTE DNR staff. And the reason why they're able to do that is the Lake District reimburses them for their costs at about $8,000 every year. We feel like that is an incredible community asset for Koshkonong to be one of 12 privately run fish hatcheries on Koshkonong. Just kind of a real quick overview of how do you spend $1 million of tax dollars trying to get something that is beneficial for the ecology, beneficial for recreation, beneficial for turtles and frogs and fish and ducks, beneficial for the wetlands, and creates no harm. This is for all user groups. So the economic impact report for the last year, it's been sitting at DNR with no phone calls, no action. No one else has submitted any economic impact reports. I will credit the DNR, though. Almost 8 months ago, the Deputy Secretary and Mr. Rasmussen agreed to come to UW-Whitewater and spent 3.5 hours with the Economics Department to try to understand the methodology of the report. I give them great credit. It's one of the few times in the last 13 years that we're able to visit with DNR staff one-on-one and explain to them and let the professionals explain, how do you conduct an economic impact report on what does low water mean on a recreational body of water. So we're here to get relief. We're here to put something behind that Supreme Court language that says the DNR must consider economic impact.
Okay, who in the DNR are you dealing with?
Well, for 13 years, we've had a revolving door of secretaries, and then the last year we've had 3 deputy secretaries that we've worked with. But primarily, most recently, it's been Mr. Russ Rasmussen and Pam Giersack.
And Chairman, there's a long history here, but the provisions in this legislation is really prospective. It's just setting up a process that allows us information to get before DNR and to put on some time frame to respond.
These 21 provisions in this, you guys have been here all day.
Right. Yes. So
any one of these provisions would take a lot of time to get just right. So
yes, and so it's
I don't know what I'm going to do. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to talk to Mr. Rasmussen. I know him. He's on special projects over there now. See why they're not giving you the water. I represent this area, but I'll call on your behalf to see what the reason is. We've got your contact information. Okay. Questions from committee members? Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I figured my comments on Lake Koshkonong decision would get attention if there was anybody here that was concerned about that one, and here you are. And I did not question the process part of it. I questioned the language that says that the department needs to, in making its determination, has to give substantial weight to the Lake District's economic report on property values. And substantial, and let me just read the language. All public comments received, let me back up. The Secretary of Natural Resources shall consider the district's petition, the department's preliminary determination, and all public comments received, and shall give substantial weight to any findings by the district relating to the water level the district has determined to be necessary to protect property values and economic values within the district's jurisdiction. I had heartburn over the use of the word substantial, which seems to imply, and I don't see how you can give any other interpretation, that the substantial means more than all the other considerations. So that was the issue that I was raising. It seems to me it is putting your finger on the weight, and I would be surprised if you actually had requested the inclusion of that term.
It was not the intent that it be a deference be given to them on the overall, on all the values of all the things that they're supposed to consider, which includes protection of life, health, interest of the public rights and navigable waters. It was only intended that with respect to our property, when we make findings on the economic value to our property, that is what gets the weight. And so the underlying standard as to what's to be considered does not change. And the weight of each of those factors would not change the way I read this statute. And certainly what we were hoping to get. It was with respect to one of those factors, our property values, and the economic impact to our businesses in the Lake District's jurisdiction, within our districts, that you give deference to our views on how it affects us, and just that one factor. So I understand that that's not an unreasonable interpretation you may have. I don't read it that way, and it was never but anybody's intent to be interpreted that way, that it is not going to increase the weight of economic impacts in DNR's overall decision. They will consider all the factors they always had, including economic, the same as they have before. I don't know if that answers your question. I'm sure you still have that same concern, but that was not the intent of this provision, and I don't read it that way. We just need to get deference with respect to all the work we've done with respect to our property owners and our businesses. That's all.
Well, I think it'd be hard not to have that interpretation, and what is the parameters of substantial is pretty nebulous. But I think I just wanted to clarify my objection to that particular provision.
And there's no magic to substantial weight. Local units of governments are generally given deferences in areas of their expertise, and that's all that this was intended to do, is in areas of our expertise, our property owners and our business. It would be fair to give a certain level of deference, particularly when you consider the department has zero expertise in this area.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Mike Hahn, Lake Koshkonong Wetlands